Welcome, everybody. It is another game week for the Buffs, and we're going to preview the game against Delaware. And clearly, the Buffs' rule for wearing red does not apply to media because, Adam, here you are wearing red.
It's orange, Brian. I don't know if you're colorblind or I am. One or the other. I feel very confidently that I'm wearing orange right now, and I'm excited. I'm getting back into running, so I've got my running shirt here. I'm one of these people back over here
Yeah.
that's back in the pack, but I'm going to get up to be this person
If,
soon enough.
if there's any people on the back of that shirt, that's me. But yeah, it's um, yeah. All I know is it looks a little red right here, from my perspective, and we'll see
I
what.
wore a salmon shirt like 2 summers ago, and people like would not let it go. I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, it's not red. Like I don't own a red thing in my house,
I
you
will
know.
say
So
I'm gonna let you have the hook in this regard. In that, look, Deion Sanders and Deion Sanders Jr. like to wear red too, and they'll wear it around the facility. So
but they're smart enough not to do it around Boulder. Like good on them. Like I think
yeah,
we want to nitpick, Coach Prime and stuff. Like, come on, give credit where credit's due. Like he said, that's not our colors when he was given those four shoes. What was that, like a month ago? And he's like, no, I can't wear those.
yeah.
So let's give Coach Prime some credit there too.
Bucky's more likely to wear it than Coach Prime. I will say that.
Back in Dallas, I think Bucky is going to do that. Yeah.
Speaking of, nobody came here for fashion talk, but I will say one last thing on fashion talk is that um, there were so many things obviously with the game last week, but I will say what Coach Prime did last week was pretty cool to honor Coach Mack. In with the old school uniforms and including the white socks, which we know Coach Prime does not like white socks on his players, but he let them wear white socks. And I thought he mentioned he had to prime it up, whatever it was with his outfit. But the jacket he was wearing was pretty cool. It had like the old school Buffs logo, and I think it said football staff on it. And the hat was kind of old school. So I give Coach Prime credit for a nice tribute to Coach McCartney last week.
Well, like, when you get into that post game press conference and you're like, your mind's going in these different directions, and Coach Prime came in there and he wore that, seeing it up close and personal was like, man, that's the coolest outfit any CU coach has ever worn. No offense to Mel Tucker and his shorts
I was
game
just
out
thinking
at
the same
Arizona
thing.
State.
I thought the very same thing.
No, Coach Prime pulled that off way better than Mel Tucker did. I'm going to say that
All right.
definitively. I'm
All
going to
right.
say that definitively.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. So shout out to Coach Prime. I thought he looked pretty good, and it was an awesome tribute to Coach McCartney. And I'm sure there's going to be more this year at some point as they honor Coach McCartney going forward. And the unfortunate thing, and we've talked about it, we're not going to stick on Georgia Tech, but the unfortunate thing is that they couldn't win that game. In that settling of the 1990 national title last week. But the Buffs are moving on, Adam, and we talked about it this week, and they got an opponent with Delaware that. They've never played before, just like last week. They never played Georgia Tech. There's no history with Delaware, though. And here's a brand new opponent coming to Boulder.
Yeah, it's not quite the challenging dilemma I think Colorado faced going against North Dakota State last year. Not only was NDSU going into their NCU going into the first game of the year, but I didn't think Delaware looked all that great in their season opener. And I know
Yeah.
Deshaun Jackson is taking over that program, and Delaware State is going to do a better job. But that was your one FCS team on your schedule as you elevate from FCS, which Delaware did a great job of doing here recently under their head coach. But making that jump and just not really making a statement, I don't think people out there expected.
Yeah, and it was unfortunate for them. I mean, their starting quarterback gets injured. I think it was the first play of the second series the other night, Zach Marker. But that they didn't come out, they didn't score the first series, and it took them a little while to get it going offensively. Nick Minicucci's the quarterback this week, and it's not like he's never played before. I mean, he started 5 of their 11 games last year. They had three different quarterbacks last year, and so he's been under the lights. Maybe not. 40 some thousand, almost 50,000 he'll see on Saturday, but he's played before. And yeah, it took them a little bit to get going. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I was watching that game against Delaware State a little bit the other night, and I was like, you know, there's it wasn't that impressive. But again, I expect the team to be better going forward. And I asked Coach Prime about the old adage of getting better week one to week two. Um, but I expect both teams to be better. I think Delaware's probably better than even what they showed last week.
You went viral on that, by the way. I just
I
was
did.
researching something about this game, and you came up about asking Coach Prime about that, and just kind of how you reverted that question. That was interesting.
Well, I knew in asking something like that, he was going to say, something like, I've never heard that. Who said that? And I had just heard Nick Saban say it the night before, and so I was ready with it. Like I knew I was going to say, well, Nick Saban said it last night, and his response was perfect. He's like, well, hey, if Nick Saban says it, then I'm going to go with that.
I get the Aflac duck over here. Hold on. This is their connection, right?
There
These
you go.
guys.
I don't know why you have that,
Well,
but
my wife got that a couple years ago when she actually got to photograph the Aflac Duck with a couple of Colorado's players around there, and it was kind of a cool scene. So yeah, I've got this hanging out in my office.
there you go. The show's going off the rails today. Uh, but yeah, I do expect both teams to be a little bit better. But this is a big week for the Buffs, Adam. I mean they've got some things to prove, and um, uh, you know I'm certainly not hitting the panic button after last week. I think that was one of the toughest opponents they're going to face, and I came away with it saying, you know what, they didn't win the game. There's things to improve upon, but there's a lot of good things they did, and I think that they're going to be a pretty good team this year.
Yeah, no, I think the overreaction is warranted from a fanatic standpoint.
Mhm.
And we talked about that on our analysis video the other day. You can't expect to get folks to be this excited about a football season and then you lose a football game and expect them to have the proper perspective, right?
Yeah.
But it was similar to Nebraska last year. That was early in the season. It wasn't the
Hmm.
first game, but
Yeah.
we talked about that. It took some time to kind of ease into this thing. I will say, watching well off media, like Coach Prime is definitely he's laid into this team this week, Brian. Like
Yeah.
they feel a sense of urgency. Like he definitely has instilled that within them.
Yeah, and he probably should. I mean, this is the first time in his college coach career he's lost an opener. He's never been 0-1 before, so I imagine there's a little bit more sense of urgency. He's never been in behind the eight ball after game one, so they certainly don't want to be 0-2, and more so, I think they need to look good. I mean, you don't want to. It's one thing to win this game and you slug through and it doesn't look great and you don't feel good about this team after this week too. It's another thing if you go out there and do what you're supposed to do and you win impressively. I think that can turn a lot of minds and thoughts on how this team is going to do the rest of the year.
Yeah, we talked about it. I think they win the next three games. Houston on the road might be a little bit more challenging than
Mhm.
this week or the week after that. But this is a football game you got to win convincingly, and I think they will because there has been a little bit more of kind of that edge within this program based on the result. You don't want that to happen. You'd love to come off, optimistic off that first game. And even if they were flying high off that, if they beat Georgia Tech, I don't think they would come out this week and lose.
Yeah.
But it's completely flipped on its head. Like they're going to come out and they're going to be convincingly motivated, more so than we saw last week. There's a couple of storylines in this game that I thought were interesting going in the offseason, but Caleb Fourier decided to retire. So now I
Mhm.
think, uh, really the new big theme going into this game is can DJ McKinney become the first cornerback in Colorado history to get a pick in four straight games?
Yeah, and he was the one. I don't know if did you watch the press conference with Ryan Carty, the Delaware head coach?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was asked, what players should Colorado or could Colorado did they have that could give you guys some fits? And the one he actually singled out was DJ McKinney. He said, "Man, that's the one guy that more so than others jumps off the page is DJ McKinney." Yeah, it was a great pick by him last week. You mentioned that to me. He has three in a row. I had forgotten about that, because he had the one in the bowl game. And then he obviously had one against Oklahoma State, his old team, at the end of last year. So yeah, three in a row. Um, Four in a row would be awesome. The Buffs are going to need some turnovers. I don't think they need turnovers to win. I think that to dominate the way that they want, you want to force some turnovers, I guess is a better way to put it, is they've got to force some things and force some mistakes. And Nick Minicucci hasn't thrown a ton in his career, but he threw one last week, and DJ McKinney is going to be ready for it.
Yeah, no question. I think that's another plot line here is that Delaware is a good football team. They've got a backup quarterback, and their stud running back from last year is now on the practice squad for the New Orleans Saints. So
Mhm.
this is not the same team that won 9 games at the FCS level last year. It's still a well-coached team with Ryan Carty. I expect that if Colorado shows up and they're not ready to play, that could be a problem for sure. But you shouldn't be scared about this opponent, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and there was their top. I think he's probably their top receiver, Jake Thaw. Actually played at Michigan,
Yeah.
before he came to Delaware. So he's been in some big games, and thought that some of their comments about playing in this game, were interesting. In that, they're excited about it, obviously, but I'm saying, hey, you take this moment in and you soak it in and enjoy being in a moment like this. But then you kind of let things settle in after a few snaps and just go play football. That's kind of the way you have to approach it if you're Delaware. But I will say one thing that's interesting to me is as Coach Prime goes throughout his coaching career, and as you're facing some younger coaches like a Ryan Carty, is that you hear stories like Ryan Carty talking about how his friend gives him a call this week. He says, "Man, remember when we were playing football in the backyard and we would take turns pretending who was Deion Sanders, And so it's interesting, when you're facing these coaches, that tried to be as they were growing up. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic. There's not a lot of coaches in college that the opposing coach tried to be them growing up, right?
Who did you try to be growing up? I was always more of a basketball player, so
Yeah.
I would go Charles Barkley and just try to run my mouth at people.
Well,
That probably doesn't surprise anybody.
yeah, baseball. I love baseball. So Dale Murphy, but I will say, as far as two sport athlete, Bo Jackson was always my guy. And so whenever you
Okay.
played different sports, it was always Bo Jackson. And you know, Deion Sanders obviously was on that other level as well, but Bo Jackson was my guy.
I remember going on a vacation with my dad, and we went to Long Beach because he had a work trip there, and he brought me along. And we went into a restaurant, and they had the Atlanta Falcons playing early during Deion Sanders' tenure there. And he was educating me on Coach Prime. This is way
Yeah.
off Delaware at this point. We've completely gone off the rails, but he was telling me like this guy like shuts down half the field. Just watch this. Just watch this. It's the
Yeah.
most beautiful thing. And so I appreciate my dad for kind of planting that in my head way back in the day. I mean, I was probably like
Yeah.
14 years old at the time.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like growing up, I mean, there was no Major League Baseball here until my senior year of high school when the Rockies came about. And so the Braves and Yankees were my favorite teams growing up, and that's who Coach Prime played for early in his career. And aside from the Broncos, I always liked the Cowboys because I had an aunt that got me into the Cowboys, and I love Tony Dorsett. So Coach Prime played for the Cowboys as well. So I always liked Coach Prime, but as far as trying to be him, there was no way I was going to do that. And Ryan Carty had a funny comment saying, "Yeah, we certainly didn't look as good out there trying to be like Deion Sanders as he did." So the one thing he wants to do this week is now try to be like him as far as winning games at Folsom Field, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So
It's not going to happen though, I don't
it's not
think,
going to happen.
unless
So
it's a
yeah,
absolute disaster for CU.
right.
And in which case I might be on the road down to Mexico afterwards.
Maybe we'll start covering Delaware if that happens. But yeah, so let's get this thing back on the rails and talk about a preview here. What do you think? I mean, what do you see in this matchup? I mean, it's obviously different than trying to dissect something against Georgia Tech or Kansas State, something like that. And Coach Carty talked about it. He goes, look. when you're facing this team that's supposed to be better than you and everything, we have to win one-on-one matchups, and they've got to really come with intangibles, right? A certain fire, a certain attitude, things like that. But on paper, the Buffs should win this game pretty easily, right?
Definitely. I know you reached out to a Delaware writer that was actually a 14-time winner of Delaware Sports Writer of the Year, Kevin Tresol
Tressolini,
Tressolini
yeah,
of the News Journal. He picked Colorado win 42 to 14. So
yeah,
this is somebody pretty close to that program. And I kind of had a similar-ish prediction in line. We'll get to that a little bit later here soon. But this is a transitioning Delaware team. This is a Colorado football team that should blow the gates off this game if they want to be Big 12 contenders. And we said it, I think, on Tuesday of like, this team seems to be better when they've got their back against the wall, us against
mhm,
the world mentality. And you've got that now. These guys saw what stuff is put out there on social media. Some of it's fair, some of it's really just below the belt, but
yeah,
you got to deal with that as a college football player in 2025. And so I think you got to use that as motivation. I think if they don't blow Delaware out, it'd be a little bit concerning.
yeah. I agree with you. I mean, from the research I did this summer, I believe I'm right on this, that this is the farthest Delaware's ever traveled for a regular season game in their program history. So they're not used to coming out here. And, the other thing is they've played some FBS teams in the past, and their most recent ones have not gone well. I mean, I think their most recent one was Penn State. I think it was like 63 to 17, something like that. They got blown out. And, Penn State, I know, is a different deal. That's generally a top 10 team, and there's twice as many people in that stadium than there is in Boulder. But they've got to deal with the same type of stuff, right? Is that they're going to a team that should beat you. And Coach Carty mentioned this week, Adam, that he goes, I think we're better prepared for this than we were a few years ago because they've been building that program. But he the reality is they know they're supposed to get beat, and what makes them dangerous is that they've got nothing to lose here. They can come in here and be like, whatever, we got nothing to lose. Let's just go out there and play and have some fun with it. That's what makes these teams dangerous, is that they do have nothing to lose. And one of their defensive linemen, Jake Hall, mentioned that CU's offensive line is big and physical. He goes, well, I think we're big and physical. So as a defensive line, we're excited about that. And so when you have a team that gets excited about the challenge and they're playing loose, that's when they're dangerous. And so that's what CU has to guard against, I think.
Yeah. Are we getting into predictions here? What's your score
Yeah, let's
prediction?
go. Let's go. Yeah, I think I'm pretty close to, you said Tressolini was 42-14,
Yeah.
the writer. I'm pretty close to that. I'm going 42-17. I think the Buffs win this going away. And, we can talk a little bit more about Julian Lewis. I'm not sure how much we're going to see of Julian Lewis. I certainly think that Caden Salter is the starter, and there's no quarterback controversy. This is a great opportunity to get Julian Lewis some playing time. I think he's going to get it. I think he's going to have ample opportunity to play in this game. But I think that you lean on Caden Salter to kind of build this lead and get you up big, and then turn it over to Julian Lewis. But I think the Buffs win it going away.
Yeah, no, I very similar prediction to you. This is a program that just doesn't have FBS recruiting classes.
Yeah, not yet.
And they've got one transition into FBS, and they've got a few transfers in there. You mentioned some of the receivers that have transferred in, and they've got some talent in this program. I think they're going to do okay in Conference USA. I said, what did I say yesterday? Sun Belt Conference,
Yeah.
Conference USA. I think they're going to be okay in that conference, but this is a tough transition for them in their first year without having that talent built up. And uh, I really would be surprised if Colorado doesn't win this running away. I'm going to go 45-17 for the Buffs.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's going to be, it should be an easy game for the Buffs. I will say one thing I want to add is that I mentioned this doing a video with Pat Rooney too, but we both talked about the running game. You want to see more of that. But I also think this is an important game to get the receivers heavily involved for the Buffs, because they weren't last week, and they've now heard about that. And what have we noticed in the first 2 years is that when there's a topic, that gets talked about, the Buffs come out and try to fix it, right? If they're talking about the run game, they come out and they'll try to run the ball. If they're talking about this, they'll come out and try to do this. I think the lack of receiver involvement last week has been something that has been criticized, and I think they fix it. I think that's going to be a point of emphasis for them. I looked; it doesn't sound like Omari Miller would play, at least as of Tuesday when Coach Prime talked. He hadn't even practiced yet, so and frankly, I wouldn't want to play Omari Miller this week if I'm the Buffs. Right? This is a week if he's dealing with an issue, just sit out, Omari, and be ready for Houston next week. But I think this is one we're going to see the receivers more involved than last week. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I actually, Amarian was out on Wednesday as well. You could
Yeah.
see that on well off. So I don't think we're going to see him this week. That leads me last week. I asked you who was going to break out in that football game, and we had the same guys on both sides of the ball. We had Martavius French on defense. He got two fumble recoveries, kind of hit and miss from there. I'm
And
not
and
going to take.
and and one and a
I'm not
half
going to take
tackles
it.
for loss.
Yeah, I'm not going to take a big W there, but early in the game, I was
Yeah.
looking down at you, just try to give you a head nod. Uh, and DeKalin Taylor was our other guy, and he caught the first touchdown of Colorado's season in
Yeah.
2025. So we did okay there. It wasn't a win, so nobody wants to hear that. This week, Draylon Miller is my guy. I think he's gonna kind of following up with your point of receivers being challenged, stepping
Mhm.
up. I think Draylon Miller is going to have a huge game on Saturday.
Okay. I'm gonna go Joseph Williams. I think this will be
Okay.
a Joseph Williams type of game on offense, and but I think you could almost throw about four or five receiver names in a hat and pull them out and say that's gonna be the guy, and you might be right because as you were saying that, I initially was thinking, man, this could be an Isaiah Harge game too, because he had he had such a good game on special teams last week that I could see them trying to make an effort to reward him on offense with some more touches. And so I'm going to throw that out as I guess, a consolation pick is Isaiah Harge. But what about defensively? Who's your breakout guy this week?
I like that you did that because I got a consolation pick here as well. I
Okay.
think Arden Walker, as the leader of that front seven, based off last week's performance and his leadership and what we've seen from him this past offseason, what we saw
Yeah.
from him last season, this is a guy that is not going to allow the folks around him to underperform in this football game. And so he's my main guy. But again, I picked 45-17. So I think London Merritt off the edge is going to
Mm,
have a couple plays.
that's an interesting choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never would have thought that because he got in there, what was it, a handful of snaps last
Hmm.
week? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's an interesting choice. Defensively, I'm going to go with a surprise one because we were talking about DJ McKinney earlier in this video. I I'm going to say he doesn't get his interception because I'm not sure they're going to challenge him a whole lot. Uh, but I think they will on the other side. And I'm going to say RJ Johnson steps up and has a
Well,
good game in this one because those corners are really challenged after this last week, and it was not a great game, and nobody's really stepped up. I'm going to say this is RJ Johnson's time to do that. And
it's a
as far
bolder pick than mine. So kudos to you. If
that
that comes through, I will definitely be the first to congratulate you on that.
if I'm wrong, all I'm guilty of is supporting a buff, right? So, and then I guess if I did a sleeper one, I think Quincy Wiggins has a game this week, and he made a couple of plays last week. I think Quincy Wiggins is going to show up a little bit more this week.
Yeah, he's one of the best stories on this football team, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And just seeing his reaction after getting that sack last Friday, like it's sometimes like when you're covering a game, you're just like XYZ, got to get to this, do this, write this,
Yeah.
produce this. And then you rewatch the game and you're like, man, I remember talking to Quincy at Media Day and just kind of the hope that was in his eyes and to
Yeah.
see him get that moment and then, pound his chest, like that was cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And I will say, as you were talking there, I was thinking if there's a consolation pick, when Coach Prime and there, I know there's more.
We're cutting this off, Brian.
I'm cutting this off. I just want, okay, let me just add this. I want to add this little thing. Coach Prime mentioned more rotation at linebacker this week. I would not be surprised to see Sean Myers make an impact on this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he got in there only 12 snaps last week, and it was a pretty effective 12 snaps. And we always say this: say what you will about PFF rankings. He was our number one rated defender last week. Made a couple tackles in only 12 snaps. If there's more rotation, I look for Sean Myers to have a big game.
And that was one of the interesting takeaways we all, I think, as media members had this week talking to those linebackers was that going into Folsom Field, yeah, the fans are screaming on third down because they want to distract the defense, but the defense is also trying to make their call, and
Yes.
it's really difficult. I thought Sean Myers kind of had that just gamer mode
Yeah.
going on out there.
Yeah.
And I know he didn't play a ton of snaps, but he definitely is a guy that I think is trending upwards in this program. And Coach Prime said it before the opener that there's some guys when the lights come on that are just better,
Hmm.
and you got to get those reps. And Sean Myers could be one of
Yeah.
those. It's only one game. We'll see.
Yeah. Speaking of linebackers, I thought it was interesting too that Martavis French and Reginald Hughes both talked about, yeah, we got to get used to playing with each other, and it's come along. And Andre Hart was like, that's overrated. These guys know they've played a lot of games, and so um, I'm going to side with the players on that. If they're feeling that, I think that duo is going to look better as the season goes along. But yeah, it was interesting to hear them both say communication and kind of it was tough their first game in an environment like that, and so to have those guys admit it was kind of refreshing, but also like, wow, okay, there's something to that maybe these guys will get better as the year goes along.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're human, you get into a situation, and if it's new, it evokes the amygdala, which is a
Yeah,
flight, fight, or freeze mechanism.
yeah,
You're not in your frontal lobe, and
mhm,
so when you have more experience in that, you get settled in, and you want to accelerate that in practice. But until you have a packed out Folsom Field, there's no
yeah.
way to replicate that, really.
Yeah, and we heard the same thing about Caden Salter this last week, and so maybe that was kind of the theme of last week was that there was just a lot of new guys that were a little nervous and didn't handle the spotlight as well. But I don't expect that to be a theme with those guys going forward. I think Caden Salter is going to be better. I think that Reginald Hughes and Martavis French will be better. A Tion Parks, first time in an environment like that. So there's a lot of those guys that you expect. All right, fine, flush that. You got it out of your system. Now let's go play football.
Yeah, Hughes played at Ole Miss a little bit.
Yeah,
And UTSA is not a big football program for Martavius French, but he played in enough environments that, like, yeah,
yeah,
it's gonna get more natural for those guys.
yeah. Well, this week it'll be interesting. Only from what I was told earlier today on Thursdays, we do this. Only about 44,000 tickets sold for this game. The lowest attendance under Coach Prime was 49.4 for North Dakota State. So they got some ticket sales to do, Adam, over the next few days. But not surprising. This is the least known opponent in the Coach Prime era at Folsom Field. So wouldn't be surprising if they finished below that 49,000.
Yeah, it's gonna be a little bit warm on Saturday, but get your butts out there. Come on.
Right. Hey, this should be a fun game. Hey, and first chance to see Julian Lewis as well, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, no, well, what are you expecting there? Do we see him in the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter?
My
What's the
guess
plan there?
is I bet we see him for a series in the first quarter. And I think he talked about, Coach Prime talked about game flow doesn't matter. I bet it does a little bit in that if Caden Salter is methodical in the first round and get you down to a touchdown, I'm not sure you want to mess with that and put Julian Lewis on the second series. But if you go down and if you don't score or if you kick a field goal, I could see Julian Lewis in their second series. But I think if Salter's in a rhythm early, I wouldn't want to mess that up. You
Yeah, I was
know,
gonna say early second quarter, I
yeah,
think
yeah.
would be my guess.
I
We'll
I I
see.
I think it's going to be. I think how early we see him depends on how good of a rhythm Caden Salter's in. And
Yeah.
if Salter plays the way we all want him to play, then you won't see Julian Lewis in the first quarter. But I think we're going to see him a little bit during the. I would say 25% of the snaps in this game. What do you think?
Caden Salter's going to carve this defense out, by the way.
Yeah, he should. Yeah.
He should. No, I think that my guess would be that Julian gets 3 series during this football game.
Okay.
One in the first half, two in the second half. That's my
Okay.
guess.
All right. Yeah. Well, it'll be fun to see him. If they're up by 28, is he throwing?
Ooh, you got to let that arm
Yeah, you gotta let it.
flex a little bit,
Yeah.
just not to rub it in, but just to get Quentin Gibson a few yards out there. Those two
Yeah.
guys, I wrote this on our message board today that like if when Juju is out there, I feel like Quentin Gibson needs to be out there as well. Those guys seem to have a
Yeah.
really good chemistry together.
As well as Quinnell Farrakhan.
Yes, yes.
But
He hooked
those
up with him
two,
a couple times on
yeah,
Wednesday. Yeah.
yeah, those two need to be out there. I would think that if they're up big and he's in there, he's going to throw. But I don't know if you want to throw a 40-yard bomb. Maybe some short ones just to get the arm going a little bit. So that's gonna be a fun game on Saturday. I think this is one that the Buffs get right, and you feel a lot better a week from now going into Houston than maybe Buff fans do right now.
Yeah, no, it's been a rough last few days and I get it. Like folks gotta process all that, but I think I still like my 8-4 prediction before the season. I'm not gonna change that. So
Yeah,
we'll see how they look on Saturday.
I went 7-5 before the season. I'm staying on that. I thought they could do 8 or 9, but that included a Georgia Tech win, so I wouldn't go beyond 7. But I feel good about 7-5, and that's a good season still. So it starts on Saturday.
Well, you're just a hater, Brian, so that's fine.
That's right. Thanks, Adam. I appreciate it. Go enjoy your
No,
red
no.
shirt.
No, like I say that very sarcastically.
I know
Like
you do. I
you,
know you do.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. I just want to make that known.
I know you do. I don't know if other people watching know that, but yeah, not a hater. Like I've picked the Buffs almost every game I think all but one game in the last 2 seasons now. So, I
Yeah.
can't be a hater when in 15 games I picked them 14 times. Never mind the one time I picked against them, I was way wrong, but that's okay.
We got murdered after the UCF game
Oh,
last year. Man, that was rough.
I don't know if
It
I've
was
ever
like,
been more wrong about a game, because I was saying I thought that was the toughest road game on their schedule. The UCF's was way better than people were giving them credit for, and boy,
well,
was I wrong.
hindsight's 2020. Like
It
if
is,
you look
yeah,
at things going into that game, it looks way different than things do now,
yes,
right?
yes, yeah. There's no question, but yeah, that's the one time I picked against the Buffs in the last 2 seasons now. So I can't be a hater if I'm 14-1 picking the Buffs. So let's
You're
just
not a
run with
hater,
that.
Brian.
Thanks, I
I'm
appreciate
gonna
it.
throw that in there,
And
even though I brought it up initially. But sometimes we gotta air this stuff out in public, Brian.
well, if you're gonna do that, then I'm gonna say fine. Enjoy your orange shirt today.
Okay. I will
Uh,
enjoy my orange shirt. If you watch The Godfather, orange is not a good thing.
yeah,
Vito Corleone has some issues every time there's an orange in the room. So that's my movie buff history for you out there.
there you go. I appreciate it. And Adam, we'll see you on Saturday.
Okay, sounds good, Brian.
Bye.